Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'll be discussing about communication and globalization. We will be tackling about the definition, the impact of globalization, intercultural communication, its characteristic, the world Englishes, and the world English. But before I start, once again, this is Lizette P. Tarania, or call me Ma'am T. Alright, so here is the definition of globalization. According to Noah Sick in 2017, he said that it is the process of bringing people together and making them interact and exchange ideas across traditional borders. According to Downing in 2007, the world, driven largely by advances in technology, has become inextricably interconnected across distance and other boundaries. According to Gumble and Gumble in 2013, it is the increasing economic, political, and cultural integration and interdependence of diverse culture. You know what? In today's reality, nothing is impossible through the use of technology because goods, services, and even cultural practices are being shared. Interacting with people, not only locally but also internationally, is definitely possible in just one click or by just using our mobile phone or any gadget with with an internet connection. Now, what do we mean by cultural integration and interdependence, or what is interdependence? Interdependence refers to two or more countries that impact and rely on each other. This means that countries rely on each other most specifically when we're talking about integration of economic activities. Okay, so what drives globalization? Number one, globalization has sped up enormously over the last half century, thanks to the great leaps in technology. Number two, the internet has revolutionized connectivity and communication and helped people share their ideas much more widely, just as the invention of printing press did in the 15th century. The advent of email made communication faster than ever. And then third, the invention of enormous container ships helped too. In fact, improvements in transport generally, faster ships, trains, and airplanes have allowed us to move around the globe and much more easily. So it clearly states here that connectivity and communication helped each nation to grow and develop more and more. Look, in the past years, people are using Telegram just to communicate, and months before they get or they receive the message. But because of the advent of the internet, communication became more easy and synchronously or asynchronously, they can get the message in the blink of an eye. Another thing is importing and exporting of goods is no longer a big problem because of the development of transportation. Now let me show you the different signs of globalization. So look at the pictures. Those can also be seen here in the Philippines. You see Samsung, Nokia, HP, Microsoft, Google, and etc. etc. These are not just used or seen in the United States or the rich countries. We also have it here in our country. You see different call centers here in the Philippines, and Filipino call center agents assist the foreigner, let's say for example, hotel booking, flight, services online, and etc. We also have McDonald's here, Coca-Cola, Jollibee, and other food chains. Here in the Philippines, we have a lot of foreign restaurants. Okay, so these are some of the signs of globalization. All right, let's proceed to the impact of globalization. The first one is interconnectedness of people on global scale. So that means even outside our country, we can still communicate with people across borders. Number two, virtual communication. So we have an online teaching and learning. Okay, this is an example. Online tutorial. Here in the Philippines, we have a lot of Filipino teachers doing an online teaching job. So again, another is company to company, locally and internationally. We can transact and do business virtually. For the third one, cultural awareness. So through globalization, we're able to know the culture of different countries. Like, let's say, for example, some Filipinos became fond of watching Korean novellas. So by watching series of these novellas, we became, or people became familiarized with the Korean culture. Example, how they treat the elders, how they eat, and even how they greet people. Number four is time. So when we talk about time, we talk about communicating synchronously or asynchronously. So it's like what we are doing. We do an asynchronous teaching and learning, and we also do asynchronous teaching and learning. All right, so let's proceed to the intercultural communication. So what is it? According to Wikipedia, intercultural communication is a discipline that studies communication across different cultures and social groups, or how culture affects communication. Now let us have the definition of culture. So the first one, according to USIM 1963, culture is the learned and shared behavior of a community of interacting human beings. According to Fielding in 1996, it is a system of beliefs, assumptions, and values shared by the group of people. And lastly, according to Lustig and Coaster in 2003, it is the learned set of shared interpretations about beliefs, values, and norms that affect the behaviors of a relatively large group of people. So, meaning, in short, culture is shared and learned through communication. So, let us say you stay in a new place for a month or two. From that period, you will learn the different cultures of the people living in that area or in that place. And somehow, you adapt it just to be accepted by the people around you. So that is culture that is being shared and that is being learned. All right, so look at this picture. You will see inside the circle the word culture, and you will see the different flags representing different countries. So when we say intercultural communication, we are sharing, example, language, courtesies, okay, and also communication, rituals, roles, customs, relationships, or how do we communicate with our parents, how do we communicate with our friends, and etc. And then the different practices as well, the different behaviors or the expected behaviors of this specific people in this country, and then the values, thoughts, and even the manners of interacting. So these words, okay, are the things that we share to different culture or to different countries. So the second one is cultures are shared. We act as members of our own cultural group, not as individuals, because belonging to a culture means following the norms of the group. Fitting into the group means acceptance and fellowship, and it provides us members with feelings of security and love. Example, when a person decided to work abroad, all he needs to do is to try to figure out how the people act, speak, greet, or even using the sign languages or body languages. Now, this person already learned that whenever people greet, they bow. So for him to be accepted and to be able to fit into the society where he stayed, he has to adapt it to be accepted by the people around him. And once he feels already that he is already accepted and secured, then that's the time that he can also share his own culture, because these people will be interested to know how Filipino people act and how Filipino people speak. Okay, so this is cultures are shared. Okay, so the third one is cultures are multifaceted. So what does this mean? Multifaceted is something with many features or perspectives to consider. So let's have it. We are surrounded by cultural norms that affect language, religion, basic worldview, education, technology, social organization, politics, and law. All are interacting with one another. Behavior and things common to people who live together in social groups are considered cultural universals, but the performance of these activities and things differ dramatically from culture to culture. So again, when we say multifaceted, it means something with many features and perspectives to consider, because we have different language, religion, we have different educational system, we have different social organization, we have different culture, we have different beliefs and customs. Okay, so you know that it differs dramatically from culture to culture, and you cannot insist to follow your own norms. So all we need to do is to accept, to adapt, and to respect one another's beliefs, customs, and traditions. So the next one is cultures are dynamic. Cultures constantly change as cultural contact increases. New technologies emerge and economic conditions vary. Globalization has greatly changed relationships of nations and governments. Cell phones have drastically changed interpersonal communication, and the availability of the internet has affected how people of varied cultures recognize and respect their differences. So instead of having set of ideas about cultural norms, we should be sensitive, observe changes, and deal with these changes accordingly. So when we say dynamic, it means changing from time to time. Okay, so when it changes from time to time, we have to adapt with those changes. Okay, so the next one is cultural identities are overlapping. We belong to multiple overlapping cultures as we interact with one another. Some of these cultures work together while others clash. We all belong to national, regional, social class, ethnic, professional, religious, age, and gender cultures. So, this means to say that cultures are really overlapping. So, let's have this example: same sex marriage. So, in other nations, same sex marriage is legally accepted. But here in the Philippines, it's not, because this is part of our culture. So, in other nations, 18 years old and above sons and daughters should separate from their parents. But here in our country, even these sons and daughters have their own kids. They still live with their parents. Again, this is another part of Filipinos culture. Okay, so we're done with globalization and intercultural communication and how they are related with each other. Now let's proceed to communication itself. Okay, let's have world Englishes. So what does world Englishes mean? It is a term for emerging localized or indigenized varieties of English, especially varieties that have developed in territories influenced by the United Kingdom or the United States. When we say world Englishes, these are forms of English developed by non-native speakers. Example, the Indian English, the Malaysian English, and even the Philippine English. Okay? And according to Michael Buckler, there are three levels to consider in world Englishes. One is inner circle, the second one is the outer circle, and the third one is the expanding circle. So let's discuss it one by one. When we say inner circle, that is composed of the native speakers, okay? Native English speakers like US, UK or United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, and even New Zealand. And then, when we say outer circle, these are composed of former colonies of English-speaking countries where English has a strong presence, like in India, Pakistan, Singapore, Nigeria, and even here in the Philippines. Because this outer circle utilize English as the official language. Okay, and we also here in the Philippines, we considered it as ESL or English as a second language. Okay, now for the expanding circle, we have that is composed of countries where English has no official use, but still used, like China, Russia, Vietnam, Sweden, and Japan. Okay, so these countries from the expanding circle is considering English as a foreign language, or EFL. English as a foreign language. For the outer circle, it's English as a second language. And then for the inner circle, it's English as their native language. All right, so you might be confused with the meaning or with the difference between world Englishes and the world English. When we say world Englishes, it means term for varieties of English, or this is the non-native English. But when we say world English, it means global English or the lingua franca. So going back to the world Englishes, you will see here Singlish or the Singaporean English, Japlish or the Japanese English, Philglish or the Filipino English, Chinglish or the Chinese English, Konglish or Korean English, and Manglish as Malaysian English. So these are examples of the varieties of English or the world Englishes. But for the world English, we have only one, which is English, okay, as lingua franca. Now, there might be misunderstanding on the communication between Philglish and the Japlish. Even Australian English and American English have also differences because of their way of speaking, way of gestures, even the tone, and of course the facial expressions. This is why global English is preferred, and this is widely used in business, transaction, and technical communication. So, because of technological development and the growing world economy, English as lingua franca is used for trade, development, and communication all over the world. So, English as lingua franca refers to the use of English between people who do not share the same first language. So, this is taken from the study of Leyland in 2011. And I took this from Wikipedia. So let us have this lexical variation between American and British. Okay, when we say lexical variation, it means difference in words and phrases. So for the American, it's dean, and then for British, they call it as dean, rector, warden, master, or principal. And then for the American, they used dinner. For British, it's heavy lunch or supper. And then for elevator, for the British, they call it as lift. And then for French fries, for British, they call it as chips. And then for the American, they use lawyer. But for British, it means solicitor or barrister. And then for the American, they call it as no overtaking. But for the British, it's no passing. And then for the verb orient, for the British, they call it as orientate. Next is radio for the American, and then for British, they call it as wireless. And then the other one is sausages, they call it as bangers. And then scratch paper, for the British, they call it as scrap paper. And then for the specialty, it's speciality. And then for truck, British call it as lorry. And then for American, it's TV. And then for the British one, it's tele. And then for the Americans, it's students or college. And then for the British, they call it as students or postmasters. So with this, you'll be able to know which one is being used by the Filipino people. So usually we use the American English. Take a look at these examples of Philippinism. So when we say Philippinism, these are words or phrases that seem to be correct in usage, but they are actually grammatically incorrect. And we usually heard this in conversation or sometimes in writing. So let's have the given examples of Philippinism and then why it's wrong. So, one, he was salvaged. So, why is it wrong? So, misuse of the word salvage because salvage means saving something from being destroyed. Okay? So, when you say he was salvaged, you have to be thankful because he was saved. Okay. So, next is fill up this form. So, what's wrong with it? It should not be fill up. It should be fill out this form. Because fill up means to make one thing completely full, like fill up the bucket. Fill out is what's used in surveys or questionnaires. So it should be fill out the forms. Fill out the survey forms and not fill up. So fill up the glass, fill up the cup, or fill up the bucket. So the next one is carnapper. So why is it wrong? It should be car thief because most Filipinos associate this with the kidnapper. And then once the car is being stolen by somebody, you will call him or call her as carnapper, which should be car thief. And then open, close the TV lights. So what should it be? It should be turn on or turn off the TV or lights because opening is when you need to repair the appliance. Okay, so never use open the light or close the light or close the TV. Next is no parking on both sides. So this is really funny because why? No parking, it should be on no parking on either side or either side. Because how can one occupy two sides at the same time? So, absolutely, you cannot park your car in on both sides. Okay, so it should be no parking on either side or either side. And then the word CR. CR or for comfort room. So it should be restroom, bathroom, toilet, shower room because CR is not recognized by native English speakers. But here in the Philippines, we accept it, okay? So we call it as Filipino English or Philglish.